Hello everyone, welcome to this insane video. I cannot believe I'm even making this, running over the number in my head. 50,000 subscribers. Wow, having an audience on YouTube has always seemed like such a pipe dream for me for so long. I know that everyone who makes videos says this, but I genuinely never, ever expected to have hit this number when I started YouTube. And that's kind of what I want to talk about with this video. How it all began, how I became the person that I am, and I wanted to illustrate that with a Draw My Life video. I remember watching Markiplier make his version of this way back when, and since I've seen that video, I've always wanted to do one for myself. But of course, for the longest time, I didn't have a milestone to do that or an audience to watch it. And now 50,000 subscribers. Wow, if I don't do it at this milestone, I'll never do it. So I guess I should start at the beginning. I was born to a good old family in Birmingham, UK, a particularly rough part of Birmingham. And also, my mum and dad didn't have a lot of money. On top of that, they'd also been told that having a baby was actually impossible. So when I was born, I was something of a miracle baby. My parents had me and my sister both at a young age, and they were living at a flat at the time that, as I mentioned, was in a particularly rough part of Birmingham. A lot of serious crime happened in the area, and if we'd stayed there, I'm sure my life would have been very different. I'd have likely gotten involved in a lot of the crime that was going on in the area, and I'd probably have done some time in prison by now. My parents were acutely aware of this though, so when I was 3 years old, my parents moved us all out of Birmingham into a nice little town about 20 minutes away to try and give me and my sister the best chance at a life we could get. My mum worked at a gearbox company and my dad worked at a postal company. They weren't well off at all, but they always managed to make ends meet. They always worked their hardest to make sure that me and my sister never went without. I remember some Christmases we had lots and lots of presents because my mum always managed to buy lots of things for us. I'll always respect them for that. They didn't have a lot of money, but I didn't figure that out until I was an adult, since they ensured that as kids we had everything we needed. However, there was a drawback. My relationship with my parents was strained. My dad particularly, he was emotionally and eventually physically abusive, and I often theorize that this kind of came from a place of that I didn't really turn out as the son he wanted. My dad is a massive football hooligan and I wasn't. I liked video games and dragons and Lego, and I didn't really find football that interesting. Over time, his harsh words gave me a really low sense of self-esteem as I started believing all the things he said about me. He'd often threaten to knock me out or call me all sorts of names or shame me for not doing more with my life, and it was difficult to deal with. Ironically enough though, because he was so harsh on me, I craved a sense of escapism. Anything I could do to distract myself and not listen to the horrible things he was saying, and for this I turned to gaming. My earliest memories of gaming were on a little Game Boy playing a Terminator game, and after that it was the PlayStation 1, which was where I really grew up on video games. I remember distinctly playing a little game called Micromaniacs, which was a game where you played as lots of little unlockable characters and raced around a human's world as this tiny player. It was awesome. Over time, this led me onto the PlayStation 2, but then, oddly enough, the Xbox 360, and then the Xbox One, and eventually to PC and PlayStation 5, which is what I play on now. By being as harsh to me as I think he sometimes was, pushed me further away into this world of gaming. But when I wasn't able to play on the computer, aka being at school, I played pretend games instead. We'd be on the playground playing games based on Star Wars, The Clone Wars, Teen Titans, Codename Kids Next Door, lots of stuff like that. And I made a few friends over the course of my school life, although I guess because of how nerdy I was being into Lego and Dragons and Star Wars, I wasn't very popular. I had a small circle of good friends, and when I was in primary school, I had a best friend called Tom. We were as close as you could be, and we got along really well. We'd hang out every break time, playing games on the playground, planning sleepovers, talking about games. Unfortunately though, just as my gear group reached year 6 and we were in that phase of leaving school for secondary school, he was unfortunately killed in a traffic accident. They rushed him to hospital in an air ambulance, but had to eventually land in the road since the hospital didn't have a helipad to land on. Amongst many other people, I ended up doing some charity events to try and raise money to get this helipad built. 5k runs, heading door to door to ask for sponsors. I think that's why charity is such an important thing to me, because I've seen others do charity events or streams and I've always done my best to help out, but eventually I'd love to do my own charity event to try and raise money. But I guess one thing I worry about is not being big enough to make a difference, you know? When I do a charity event, I want to be big enough to have an impact and raise a decent amount of money. I want to do it for Tom. In secondary school, I was introduced to a lot more people, and it seemed that amongst every friend group, people were watching YouTubers: PewDiePie, Jacksepticeye, Markiplier, Vanoss Gaming. Some people at my school even tried to start doing YouTube, but as I'm sure a lot of fellow content creators will relate to, they ended up getting bullied for it when people found out, and they stopped. I'd always considered starting YouTube myself, but never really crossed the line to do it for some reason. Until I did. Inspired by creators like Markiplier, Angry Joe, and Vanoss Gaming, I ended up starting YouTube just after I left school, 3 days before my 18th birthday. I bought an Elgato capture card with pocket money I'd saved up, and using my crappy laptop microphone, the capture software which barely worked, and the echoing gameplay, I was genuinely terrible at content when I started making it, and I had no clue what I was doing. My mom even made my very first YouTube logo that's shown in all these early thumbnails. It's way too complicated and a little bit in your face, and it's hard to see, but she drew it for me, so it will always hold a place in my heart. Most people that I've talked to that do YouTube always take down their first ever videos, but I leave mine up. And the reason I leave them up is because when I started making content, I remember feeling so overwhelmed and so worried about what software to get, what recording equipment to buy, what microphone, what editing software to get, and I was just so stressed that I considered quitting almost as soon as I'd begun, because it just seemed so impossible. So eventually I went to the earliest videos of creators like Angry Joe or Markiplier to see how they did it, and I realized that they started out bad too. A lot of people starting YouTube don't end up starting because they think you have to be amazing at it right away, and you have to have all the best equipment and all the best software and know how to do everything. And none of those things applied to me when I started, and I still ended up giving it a shot. So I leave my early videos up on the off chance that maybe one day there's another stressed kid trying to start YouTube and he feels like it's impossible, and maybe they go to my channel and they look how I started and they can see that I struggled too. Maybe I can inspire some people to start doing YouTube and show them that you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And it was around this time that I started looking for similar creators, and I managed to find one called Epix the Panda. I actually met him on Omegle when that site was still up, and I remember I was on about 30 subscribers at the time and he was on about 200, and I remember thinking that that was so much, and I was just genuinely so surprised that he was even talking to me. But we played together a lot and he introduced me to his friends and we got a little group going. Eventually it did fall apart, but I'll always appreciate Epix for playing with me when I was nobody. He had nothing to gain by playing with me, he had way more subs than I did, but he played with me anyway, and he's always going to have my love for that. He's one of those friends that if he needs a favour from me, he gets it. No questions asked. It was also around this time I kind of had my first mini viral video, which was my Night Squad guide video, and that has about 100,000 views now, which is insane. The company that made the game actually ended up getting in touch with me, and I actually sent them shirts with my logo on it, but they wore them as well, and it was really cool, and they sent me photos and everything, and it was really awesome. As I kept making videos, I managed to finish school and apply for university. Thanks to my good grades, I managed to get into some pretty good universities, and I ended up getting my first choice. As the time grew closer to leave for university, things got worse and worse with my dad. And then one day, he just really had it in for me. He came up to my room to scold me about, I don't even remember what, but I did what I always did and tried my best to ignore him and just keep scrolling on my phone. But you know when you're in the shower or something, you think of something really good that you wish you'd said in an argument? Well, he had a moment like that, but instead of thinking about it, he kept coming back to my room to say it. He must have done this about 4 times, opening my door, hurling insults at me, threatening to knock me out, closing it, and then coming back. And the last time he did it, he threatened to knock me out again, and I'd had enough. I threw my phone down, and I stood up to him. This at the time made things a lot worse, but it would be the first stepping stone to fixing my life. We had this huge blowout argument where I just had to move out and live with my nan for a while, and then later on down the line even stop with a few friends. I won't get into all of the stuff that happened during this time in my life because it's not exactly fun to talk about, but eventually after a few short struggles I made it to university. As for YouTube, I'd started making videos regularly by then, mostly game reviews at first, but I soon expanded into commentaries, funny moments, and lots of random skits. I also ended up making this little GTA car show thing, which is this fictional like machinima type thing. It's really cringe, but I worked really hard on it. Around this time is also when I actually changed my YouTube name, because for those who don't know, I actually started my channel under the name Dr. Blue, BLUE 99. I actually explained how I came up with this in my 5k Q&A, but I changed it to Dr. Blue BLOO, which is how I'm known now. Somehow throughout university, I was managing to do 4 types of content, not including the car show, even with all my university work, and I still really don't know how I did it. I was even interviewed on the radio at one point, and I only had 300 subs at the time, but it was a really big deal for me. By this time, I'd also joined another YouTube group. We never really named it, but we had a couple unofficial names for it, like the Rainbow Pals, after this stupid event off of Rainbow Six Siege. It was myself, Kogum, Hest YT, Sir Rapturous, and a few other friends. I sadly don't keep in touch with any of them now except for Kogum, but Sir Rapturous was a cool dude and I hope he's doing well for himself, and same with Hest YT as well. I think university kind of was one of the hardest times of my life. I fell into a really big depression. Things were really tense between me and my dad, and by extension my mom. I felt like I had no family and I was suffering with bad mental health at the time, and I kind of just got to a spot where I kind of didn't care if I lived or died. I stopped looking after myself, and honestly my health got to a point where it felt like I was going to have a heart attack any day. This is where I put on a lot of the weight that I have now, and I spent 4 years in that state before I finished university, because before I went to university I actually used to be skinny, and I gained this weight through that phase and I've just not been able to drop it since. Eventually I managed to graduate university and move back home. Things were still tenuous between me and my family, and I was an IT graduate with no experience and I just could not get a job anywhere. I was forced to work in retail, warehouse work, just any odd job that I could get that I can make some money from to save up for when I wanted to move out and pay my parents a bit of rent. My relationship with my parents was strained at the time, since in the Rainbow Powers I was the Kyle. Everyone else was American, I was British, so I was the one who stayed up till 2 AM to play games. And since my bedroom shared a wall with my parents' bedroom, you can imagine how that went, given I was doing Blue Rages almost all the time back then. Something a lot of people don't know actually is that the reason for my Blue Rages back then was because I was just so frustrated with my life. I wasn't getting along with my family, I was getting no work and applying to lots of jobs and failing to even get a response most of the time. I also had no money to move out, and it was just such a difficult time for me in my life. I was so unsatisfied with where I was because I felt I had so much potential. And so I was using video games as an outlet to express that frustration. That and the fact that Call of Duty is a hellscape anyway, so it wasn't exactly the most relaxing game to be playing. And also around this time the Rainbow Pals were kind of falling apart, people were becoming inactive or nasty, so I slowly started to end up on my own. However, that all changed quite soon. I managed to find a post on YT Talk from Dan, or as you know him, XLHD, about their group looking for new members. I inquired, joined the Winkies Discord, and I also finally managed to get myself an IT job, doing something I was really good at, and it really turned my life around. A few months later and I'd been promoted at my job, and I was invited to the Winkies as a fully fledged member. After joining the Winkies, I decided to focus solely on funny moments, because that's what I always had the most fun making. I'd made many game reviews back in the day, one of which is almost 2 hours long, because at the end of the day, I just wanted to make content that people enjoyed, and whilst the reviews were something I could be really proud of, the funny moments brought a lot more joy to the world than the reviews did. The Winkies introduced me to TikTok at the time, and to my surprise I actually went viral a few times for a few people, so I decided to start uploading on there myself. After a few viral clips of my own, I grew and grew and eventually went from a channel that was gaining 100 subs a year to where I am now, which is often 100 subs a day. It's genuinely crazy to me, and all I can do is be so eternally thankful to you guys. A lot of the creators I mentioned earlier were a big inspiration for me, but mostly it was Markiplier. He's always been the one I related to the most, and I genuinely count myself lucky because I feel like Markiplier has such a lovely and nice audience, and I feel that somehow I've managed to get that too. So after I'd moved out because I got a good job and YouTube started to go well, my dad and I finally started to rebuild our bridges after about 5 years of not speaking. It was really tough for both of us because I harbored a lot of resentment for him for a really long time, but he made an effort to fix things, and so did I. So I'm happy to say that I've forgiven him now and we get along pretty well. I realise that a lot of this video has been highlighting some of the struggles in my life, and the last thing I want to do is portray myself as a victim, because that's not what this video is about. The reason I'm even including all of this is, despite all this, I'm still here. I'm still going, and I plan to keep going. I've taken on these problems, these tragedies in my life, and I've conquered them. I'll likely have more to deal with in the future, and I plan to take those on too, and conquer those too. And fast forward to now, where I've left that last job for another one that I've recently been promoted at. My relationship with my family is in a really good place, and YouTube is going really well. I'm invited to events like MCM Comic Con and Insomnia as a creator. Animators on YouTube are making animations of some of my best moments, and it's all just genuinely blowing my mind. I even ended up getting interviewed on the radio again when I was at 7,000 subscribers, and she was so impressed with how much I'd grown and wondered where I'd be the next time she interviewed me. And so far, I think she'd been pretty impressed with where I'm at now. Honestly, sometimes I feel like my life has been such a roller coaster, and I still feel like I'm leaving so much out, but I don't want to make this video too long. Thank you all so heckin' much for 50,000 subscribers. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this number because a while ago I sent out a tweet that I would do a face reveal at 50k. However, those of you who have kept up with me on socials and in streams will know that plan kind of changed. I've still not worked out all those kinks in my self-esteem yet. I'm in therapy for it and it's really helping me, but I'm not quite there yet. As a substitute though, which I hope you'll all be okay with, I'm instead going to tell you my first name. If you don't want to hear it because you just still want to see me as Dr. Blue, I'll leave a little timestamp somewhere on screen right now that you can skip to. A lot of people have tried to guess my name in the past, and I kind of knew that no one would be able to because it is such a strange name. A lot of people thought my name was Michael for a while because Dan called me in a clip where he meant to say Michael Jackson but didn't get to finish what he was going to say. A lot more recently, people think my name is Jason because this woman on a sponsorship email thinks that's my name, and I really don't know where she got that idea from, but it's kind of a meme and it's quite funny. But for those wanting to know, my first name is Major. Yes, like the army, trust me, I have heard every single joke about it. So if you want to make fun of my names or me in the comments, please at least try and be original. A lot of you are probably really confused, but I did tell you it was a strange name. A lot of people also tend to think it's my surname, so yes, my name is often written backwards. Some of you might be considering trying to look me up on social media and see what you can find, so I can kind of stop you there. I don't exist on social media. I used to have accounts under my name on a few platforms, but I deleted them because after a couple of years starting YouTube, people kept finding them, so I've already been there, people have already found them, and I got rid of them. If you're wondering what to call me now, if you want to call me Blue or if you want to call me Major, either one is fine. I'll still answer to Blue, but I'll also answer to Major. For those who were excited for the face reveal, I'm sorry to disappoint. Still working on a few self-esteem things, and as soon as I feel okay in myself and my appearance, I'll just face reveal on whatever milestone is closest. So yeah. Thank you guys for watching my Draw My Life. I hope you really enjoyed. A big thank you for my thumbnail artist Ava Volpe for being my hands during this. I personally am terrible at drawing, so I asked her to do this for me and she's genuinely done a fantastic job. If you want to give her a follow or even commission her from some artwork on your own, her stuff will be linked in the description. Also, before I go, I have a 50k Q&A coming out soon, so I'll be posting about that on some socials that I'll link down below. And if you want to ask me questions for it, feel free to do so either in the comments here or in Twitter or Discord or anywhere else. I'm also going to be streaming The Evil Within 2 since the first ever video on my channel was The Evil Within 1, and I think that would be a great way to celebrate 50k by playing the sequel. So keep an eye out for that. I stream every Friday at 8 PM, but sometimes during the week too. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you when I see you, my daggies. Bye! Hello everyone, thank you for watching today's video. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you did and you want to see more, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell icon so you never miss a new upload. I also wanted to say a big thank you to my YouTube members who are on screen right now. If you wanted to become a YouTube member, you can click this little join button on my channel homepage, but it's also on every video I make too. You get access to a bunch of awesome perks spread across 3 different levels, so you can choose which level is right for you. But please remember that it is optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. Thank you everyone for continuing to support the channel the way you do.